I've always thought one of the best ways to learn is with a conversation. Welcome to Talk and Learn, our series where I upload my notes about a topic and, with the help of AI, generate a conversation to help us learn. With that, I hope you enjoy this Talk and Learn about activity based costing. Have fun.
Today, we're going on a deep dive into activity-based costing,
Okay.
or ABC for short,
Right.
to explore how to accurately figure out the cost of products and services.
A traditional costing method
Uh-huh.
called volume-based costing
Okay.
can sometimes lead to what's called cost distortion.
Okay.
It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
Oh,
You might think you're on the right path,
yeah.
but you could be heading straight for a dead end.
Okay, let's unpack this cost distortion thing.
Sure.
I'm intrigued, but I need a flashlight for this maze.
So imagine you're running a factory back in the good old days when
Okay.
you only made a handful of products. You'd add up all your direct costs like materials and labor,
Yeah.
then lump all your indirect costs,
Okay.
things like rent and admin together.
Okay.
To figure out the cost of each product, you just spread those indirect costs
Right.
based on something simple, like say total labor hours.
Okay.
That's volume-based costing in a nutshell.
Sounds straightforward enough,
Yeah,
but I have a feeling there's a but coming.
there is.
Okay.
Volume-based costing works fine when your products all use resources in roughly the same proportion.
Right.
But as companies started offering more diverse products,
Okay.
that one-size-fits-all approach started to break down, and that's where cost distortion creeps in.
Do you mean some products end up
Yeah.
shouldering more the indirect costs than they should?
exactly.
Now others get off easy?
Precisely.
Okay.
Vinay uses this great restaurant analogy.
Okay.
Imagine you're splitting the bill evenly with friends.
Uh-huh.
Seems fair, right? But what if one friend ordered a salad and water,
Huh?
while another went all out with appetizers, a steak, and fancy cocktails? Suddenly that even split doesn't feel so fair anymore, does it?
Ouch, right.
Yeah.
You can see how this kind of cost distortion
Yeah,
can lead to some serious headaches for a business.
definitely.
Yeah.
Undercosting a product could mean you're actually selling it at a loss without even realizing it.
Oh, wow.
Overcosting, on the other hand,
Yeah.
can make you lose market share to competitors because your prices look too high.
This is where activity-based costing steps in to save the day.
Yeah.
I'm ready for that superhero origin story.
Think of ABC as that much-needed flashlight for our cost maze.
Okay.
It helps us trace costs to specific activities
Okay.
instead of just spreading them out based on volume.
So instead of just looking at how many units are being produced,
Right.
ABC focuses on what's actually happening on the shop floor, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it all comes down to understanding two key concepts: cost pools and cost drivers.
Mhm.
A cost pool is just a fancy way of saying a bucket of costs related to a particular activity.
Like a bucket for all your setup costs.
Yes.
A bucket for quality control. right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
And the cost driver
Yeah.
is what makes the costs in that bucket go up or down.
Okay.
It's the thing that's actually causing the cost.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for setup costs,
Mm.
the driver might be the number of setups required for each product.
Okay.
For quality control, it might be the number of inspections.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this works.
Yeah.
It's not just about how many units you produce, but the specific activities involved in making those units.
That's the heart of it.
Okay.
By identifying the activities and figuring out what drives the cost of each activity, you can get a much more accurate picture
Yeah.
of how much each product truly costs to make.
And that's how ABC helps companies avoid undercosting and overcosting,
Yes,
leading to better decisions about pricing and which products to focus on, right?
absolutely.
Okay.
But let's hold on there. We've got a lot more ground to cover.
Sounds like this deep dive is just getting started.
Yeah,
Ready to keep exploring.
great. Let's revisit a case study
Okay.
about Plaston Corporation.
Right?
They make lenses for a car manufacturer.
Okay.
A simple lens called the S3
Okay.
and a more complex lens called the CL5.
Right.
They were using a volume-based costing system and thought they were making a decent profit on both,
Okay.
especially those complex CL5 lenses.
Okay.
But then a competitor swooped in with a lower price
Right.
on the simple S3 lens,
Okay.
and Plaston was left wondering if they could even match that price without losing money.
Oh, wow.
Their initial thought was they couldn't compete
Right?
because their simple lens had such a low profit margin compared to the complex one.
Okay.
But that's where the cost distortion we talked about earlier comes in.
Right.
Their volume-based costing system was likely giving them a misleading picture.
I see where this is going. They decided to take ABC for a spin
Yeah,
to see if it could shed some light on the situation.
exactly.
Okay.
They started by taking a closer look at their setup activities. Turns out
Yeah.
those complex CL5 lenses required a lot more setup time
Mm-hmm.
than the simple S3 lenses.
Okay.
But their old costing system treated all setups the same, regardless of the lens type.
So even though the complex lens was gobbling up way more setup resources,
Right.
it wasn't being held accountable for those costs.
Right. It was like that friend who orders the steak and lobster but expects everyone to split the bill evenly. By implementing ABC, they created separate cost pools for activities like machine setup, quality inspection, and packaging. Then they identified the appropriate cost driver for each pool.
So instead of just spreading those setup costs based on
Say total labor hours for all lenses,
right,
they could now pinpoint how much setup cost is actually being driven by each type of lens.
precisely. And this revealed a fascinating insight.
Okay.
The simple S3 lens was actually being overcosted,
Okay.
while the complex CL5 lens was being undercosted.
So their initial assumption about profit margins was totally off.
It was. Once they had a more accurate picture of the true cost of each lens, thanks to ABC, they realized they could actually compete on price with the simple lens.
And what about the complex lens?
Yeah.
Did ABC change their thinking on that one too?
It did.
Okay.
They realized they were actually selling the complex lens for less than it cost to make.
Wow.
Armed with this new information, they could confidently negotiate a higher price with the car manufacturer for the CL5.
Wow. So they were able to save one product line from potential doom and increase the profitability of another, all thanks to ABC.
Talk about a major plot twist.
That's the power of understanding your costs.
Right.
And it's not just about manufacturing. Think about service industries
Okay.
or even your personal finances.
Hold on. Personal finances. I'm all ears. Give me an example of how I could use ABC in my everyday life.
Think back to that restaurant bill analogy.
Okay.
Let's say you and your friends decide to track your expenses separately.
Okay.
Instead of just splitting the bill evenly,
Okay.
you'd create cost pools for things like food, drinks,
All right.
and maybe even transportation. Then you'd assign cost drivers
All right.
for food.
Yeah.
It would be the number of dishes each person orders.
Okay.
For drinks.
Yeah.
The number of drinks consumed.
Right.
And for transportation, maybe the number of miles driven.
So I'd essentially be identifying the activities that contribute to my overall spending and figuring out what drives the cost of each activity. Okay, that's a really cool way to think about it. I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up,
Sure.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the limitations of ABC.
Yeah.
What are some of the potential pitfalls we should keep in mind?
Well, for starters, ABC can be quite data intensive. You need to gather a lot of information about your activities and their cost drivers. And this can be time consuming and complex.
So it's not a quick fix.
Right.
It requires some serious commitment.
It does. And as with any system, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
If your data is inaccurate or incomplete, your cost calculations will be off.
Okay.
And you might end up making bad decisions based on flawed information.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about complexity? I imagine an ABC system for a large company with hundreds of products and activities could get pretty overwhelming to manage.
It definitely can.
Yeah.
The key is to find the right level of detail for your specific needs.
Right.
You don't want a system that's so complicated that it becomes a burden to maintain.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot. Enough detail to give you accurate insights, but not so much that it becomes paralyzing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's important to remember that ABC is just one tool in your decision-making toolbox.
Okay.
It's not a magic bullet.
So we need to be realistic about its limitations and use it strategically to complement our other analysis and decision-making processes.
Precisely.
Okay.
And I think that's a great note to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've explored the ins and outs of activity-based costing, from those key concepts of cost pools and cost drivers to its potential to reveal hidden truths about profitability.
Yeah.
But like any powerful tool, it's important to use it wisely, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember that restaurant bill analogy? Just like tracking your individual expenses can help you make smarter spending decisions, using ABC can empower businesses to make more informed choices about pricing, product mix, and even process improvements. But it all starts with a solid understanding of your cost structure.
So for our listener who might be thinking, this all sounds great, but where do I even begin? What's the first step towards implementing ABC?
The first step is to really examine your current costing system.
Right.
Are you relying heavily on volume-based costing? Are you using just a handful of cost pools to allocate indirect costs? Do you find yourself constantly questioning the accuracy of your product costs? These could be signs that ABC might be a valuable addition to your toolkit.
It's like doing a cost checkup.
Oh, exactly.
Taking a good hard look in the mirror.
Right.
And being honest about those areas where you could improve.
And once you've identified those areas, you can start digging deeper into the activities that drive your costs.
Okay.
This might involve talking to people on the shop floor, analyzing production data, and really getting a granular understanding of how things work.
It sounds like a collaborative effort involving not just the finance folks, but also operations, production, even sales and marketing.
Implementing ABC successfully requires buy-in from across the organization.
Makes sense.
After all the insights you gain from ABC can impact decisions in every department.
And I imagine that's where the real magic happens, right? When everyone starts speaking the same language about costs and using that shared understanding to make better decisions together.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about moving beyond the siloed thinking that can sometimes plague organizations and embracing a more holistic view of how cost information can drive better outcomes.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into activity-based costing, what's the key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with today?
I think the most important thing is to remember that understanding your costs is not just an accounting exercise. It's about empowering yourself to make smarter, more strategic decisions that can ultimately lead to a healthier, more profitable business. Whether you're running a multinational corporation or simply trying to manage your personal finances, the principles of ABC can provide valuable insights and help you navigate those cost mazes with confidence.
That's a fantastic way to put it. It's about shining a light on those dark corners.
Exactly.
And making sure you're not leaving money on the table. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as I did.
Me too.
Until next time, happy costing.
I hope you enjoyed this talk and learn about activity-based costing. Until next time, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and may your journey be joyful.
This world today, where costs can lead us all astray. Traditional methods had their time, but now they just don't align. Allocating cost by volumes rate leaves us with a distorted state. It's like a maze without a guide, but there's a way to turn the tide. Oh, I'm shining light on the cost maze. Activity-based costing clears the haze. No more shadows, no more doubt. I'll figure what it's all about. Imagine at a restaurant dine, splitting the bill seems just fine. But when one eats less than the rest, that even split is not the best. Cost distortion plays its game, overcosting some products' names, undercosting others too, selling at a loss, who knew? Oh, I'm shining light on the cost maze. Activity-based costing clears the haze. No more shadows, no more doubt. I'll figure what it's all about. Imagine at a restaurant dine, splitting the bill seems just fine. But when one eats less than the rest, that even split is not the best. Cost distortion plays its game, overcosting some products' names, undercosting others too, selling at a loss, who knew? Oh, I'm shining light on the cost maze. Activity-based costing leads the way. Identify each cost I find, with drivers and pools I'll redefine. Cost pools are my buckets now. Activity sorted, I know how. Driver show what's causing spend, bringing guesses to an end. From setup cost to quality checks, I tally up what's coming next. Like Plaston found the profits true, ABC can guide me through. Oh, I'm shining light on the cost maze. Activity-based costing leads the way. Identify each cost I find, with drivers and pools I'll redefine. But I must keep in mind it's true, too much detail won't quite do. Data's key, but balance more, so complexity won't hit the floor. Collaboration is the way, across the board day by day. Sharing insights, making moves, together there's so much to improve. Oh, I'm shining light on the cost maze. Activity-based costing paves the way. From the factory to daily life, understanding cuts like a knife. So here's to clarity, here's to me. With ABC, I'm sailing free. The maze is bright, the path is clear, costing wisely far and near.